Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 17 of On the Flank. I am one of your hosts, John George, alongside Joe Kirkpatrick. Say hello, Joe.
Hey, everybody.
And this is a big episode, number 17. When it comes to analysis, we are on the flank. But guess what? We had a huge Watchpoint preview with tons of new information. And Joe, we got the first week of games. We know who's playing each other on the first week, and my God, did they touch on almost every storyline.
I'm sure it was intentional, yeah.
Yeah, just brilliant scheduling by them because I have a hype overdrive right now from this opening week schedule. I cannot wait. But we'll get into that a little bit later. Alongside, what else? We got a bunch of topics. Jeff Goodman had an interview with Reinforce. We'll be talking about that later. As we mentioned on our Twitter account, we will be ranking, both of us will be ranking individually the expansion team branding 1 to 8. I know we've been giving grades out when they come out, but now we give our official ranking on who did the best, who did the worst. And then we got 2 more great teams for our Season 2 preview. I'm super excited. But let's jump into the news to start it off. One of the signings we missed with DC, we were kind of doing them live last week, was Addo, of course, the Shanghai Dragons Korean player they picked up last season. He is the first former Shanghai Dragons player to join an Overwatch League team since being dropped. The one and only Addo. And honestly, not surprised. If anyone, I would expect it to be Addo, and he's going to the Washington Justice. We talked about the other 7 last week. What do you think about this last edition?
Yeah, we talked about being a little bit underwhelmed with this squad last week. I think it's nothing particularly stands out. It'd be good, like you mentioned, to have that sort of brief chance at redemption maybe here in season 2. But yeah, it's nothing like super significant, I wouldn't think. Obviously, I'll have to see if they can prove us wrong.
Yeah. He was one of the best Shanghai Dragons players, but it's one of the best Shanghai Dragons players. So nothing too good to boast about there. The DC roster, we'll save it for the preview, but a little bit of hint, I don't like it too much. On Watchpoint, Watchpoint announced this for Seoul that Seoul Dynasty had signed Fitz. Watchpoint announced it for them because they were going through all the rosters on Watchpoint. Fitz was in it, and then after that happened, Seoul announced Fitz themselves. This is another DPS player who played on Going Water S and GC Busan before that. GC Busan Lucia. Yes. Before, I don't think GC Busan is in Overwatch anymore, but maybe that's why he's no longer on that team. No, it's because they were in an open division. It was an open division GC Busan team. And then he went to Contenders Trials on Going Water S. So this is going to be a fairly unknown player from Seoul Dynasty. It seems basically he doesn't have too much experience, honestly. He just started off in the pro scene on this GC Busan open division team. And then went to Contenders Trials with Going Water S. And he's a fairly unknown player. Hasn't really played too much in the professional scene. On Wikipedia, it says he started last year, or this past year, February 2018. So this is, they've got this fairly unknown player. We don't know too much about him, so I'm not going to ask you what you think about him, but this could be another unknown star, kind of.
It's curious, yeah. It's not something that you would think that Seoul would go for.
Yeah, exactly. You got tons of Contenders talent out there, but they're just grabbing from the open division, saying, this guy has potential. I like signings like that. I like picking people up from the ladder, picking people up from open division, and because Overwatch is such a team-oriented game that Sometimes, like, you'll find some people with very high skill levels in open division that are just surrounded by five other players that aren't as good as this specific player. Maybe Fitz is like that. And he is a standout on his open division, our trials team. Soul comes in and says, hey, if we have you around better players, your potential is insane. So maybe it's a situation like that. Watch point. So I was super busy this past week. I was in sunny Los Angeles, California. As we know, that was when the last episode, I was actually recording from there. And then I visited my friend in Chicago as well. I've been so busy, hard to keep up with the scene, but I dropped everything I was doing in Los Angeles on Wednesday to watch this Watchpoint preview. I remember I watched like half of it while my friend was driving me around in the car. Definitely worth using my data there. And then just sat down and watched the rest. It was 2 hours long. We got tons of information. Everyone's favorite part is the opening week, but we'll touch the other news first. An interesting one I want to point out first is two-way players. We got some more rules on that. They cannot play on both teams in the same week. So, for example, who's one of the two-way players? Fusions for Boston and Toronto, or Boston Academy now.
Yeah.
He could
Or
not.
Elk or Gator or people like
these
that.
these people cannot play on their academy team in for contenders and then just move on and play Overwatch League like 2 days later. Cannot do that in the same week. So you gotta choose one of the jerseys. You put it on. That's who you're playing for that week, basically. I mean, you're not per se choosing. Obviously, the GM is choosing and the coaches are choosing. Besides that, probably the biggest thing, we all thought this was going to happen season 3, Joe. We thought this was going to happen in season 3, but we're getting road games. Do you remember specifically, because Nate came on a little bit later, do you remember specifics on what the road games were going to pertain?
I remember it wasn't much. It was a sort of offhand mention at the very beginning of the broadcast, and then not very many details later. I don't even think we know like which sorts of roads we're talking about, but
Yeah.
maybe we'll learn more about that this upcoming week, maybe.
Yeah, I think he said Wednesday we'll know the specifics this Wednesday. But from what I caught, it seems like maybe 1 week, maybe the stage playoffs, maybe like 1 week per stage, they'll just head on the road, go somewhere else and not play in Los Angeles. Who knows? But that's what, to me, it seemed like maybe one week per stage. They were going to like head on out to, I'm guess it can't just be random cities. It's got to be one of the cities in the Overwatch League because they want to gain hype in those cities.
Yeah.
But there hasn't been. I know that the Los Angeles Valiant have announced LA Live which is right by the Staples Center and the Microsoft Theater, as their home venue. Was there? I think there was like one or two more. Do you recall any other teams announcing like their home venue?
I think Boston. I saw on Reddit that Boston was like doing focus groups for like trying to determine where it would be.
Okay.
That somebody on Reddit got like an email to be recruited for that.
Hmm.
Beyond that, nothing comes to mind.
There was one. Maybe I'm thinking of Vancouver because they're building somewhere. They're building an esports sort of focused arena. It might be Vancouver. I mean, there's some teams are owned by sports teams, so you could easily just play where the Vancouver Canucks play because the Canucks own the Titans.
It's true.
And there are a bunch of other teams like that as well. So there are a bunch of options there. I imagine. I don't know. I don't know what they'll do. We'll find out this Wednesday. I'll stop guessing and we'll just find out later. Preseason, no preseason news. We found out there are going to be 4 games a day. Where there were 3 games a day last season, right?
Yeah.
There are going to be 4 games per day instead, which confused me at first because I knew all the games were like 2 hours last season. This season, they're scheduled for an hour and a half. But I guess most games did go shorter than they usually were scheduled to.
Especially as the season went on, yeah.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder, if they're confident enough that they've gotten into a groove. They don't need the extra time buffer anymore.
Yeah, so games are scheduled for an hour and a half, which seems more right to me. I didn't know that because I barely watched the games live last season. Or towards the end of the season last season, I was playing catch up most of the time, so I didn't know exactly how long they were because I was skipping around, skipping the commercials, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so that confused me at first. I was like, are they shortening? Are they shortening the games? Is this like best of 3 now, or what's going on? And then like I realized everyone else wasn't reacting to it, and I was like, this must just be normal because no one's reacting to this. So that
Yeah.
makes sense. But Joe, without further ado, let's dive into the schedule. Let's go day by day, picking our favorite matches. Let's start with you. Day number 1. Do you have the schedule in front of you so you can
I
pick?
do. I do, yes.
Good. Start us off, Joe. What's your favorite match? This is a hell of a day.
It's true. Yeah, we got day one, February 14th, opening day. Uh, you know, other than the preseason, which you don't know about. But yeah, I mean, the really the only solid answer for me has to be this very very first match, 4 p.m. Pacific, set up for the grand finals rematch, Philly Fusion London Spitfire. Uh, what a way to kick off the season, right? Going into just immediately right back, where we left it in August or July or whatever it was.
Yeah, that's a great choice. I mean, right when I saw that, I was like, obviously, you got to do this rematch. For me, I mean, I'm super pumped for that rematch. I don't think it's the most hype game, much like the championship wasn't that too hype as far as competitiveness goes. I've been talking about it. One of my favorite storylines because I'm a Gladiators fan as well. Um, Gladiators Soul Dynasty with the Fissure departure over to Soul Dynasty. I mean, they literally have just touched every storyline. I could go through all of these: the championship rematch, Boston versus New York rivalry, the Fissure leaving LA Gladiators, and then it ends the day with Hangzhou versus Shanghai. To a Chinese team getting its first win to finish off Overwatch League Day 1 in Season 2. I'm super excited for all of these storylines, but LA Gladiators Soul Dynasty has to be the one for me because honestly, I'm super hype about Decay and Roar, LA Gladiators pickups this offseason, who are definitely going to be starters for them. And I'm super excited to see how they can compare and match up against Fissure, the best main tank of last season, according to a lot of people, who's now on the Soul Dynasty. That is my favorite storyline this entire season, but as well as day 1. Day number 2, Joe. What do you like here?
Yeah. So let's see, day two. I'm flipping through this as we go.
This one's a lot less story driven than the first day.
Yeah, it's definitely fair. I mean, people talking about this second match, Atlanta versus Florida. This is just DeFran versus McDonald's. I've heard that phrase a couple times. Um,
DeFran against his past.
yeah. But yeah, no, it's probably either that match, with the debut of, what could be argued is probably one of the most anticipated expansion players,
Yeah.
individuals in season two. Um, or I guess, yeah, no, we'll go with that for now.
All
That's
right.
fine.
Yeah. I'm excited. There's a lot of new teams on this day: Toronto, Atlanta, Guangzhou, and Chengdu, all playing, and I honestly think Atlanta will beat Florida. I could definitely see Toronto pulling off. I think Toronto's one of those sleeper teams that could possibly come out of nowhere. I could see them beating Houston. But my favorite game this day is Dallas Fuel versus San Francisco Shock, because these two teams are probably amongst fans being argued as the two teams out of the original 12 that have improved the most in the offseason. Both of them didn't make playoffs last year, and both of them are being projected by a lot of people to make playoffs this year because of their pickups. So I'm looking forward to see which one of these two teams is better. I mean, I think Dallas's best pickups were in their coaching staff, but they got some great pickups. Yeah, they definitely got some great pickups in their players as well. San Francisco Shock, probably their worst offseason change was not listening to me and deciding to fully embrace gray as one of their colors. It looks so ugly. But yeah, they have a good team. So, day 3, Joe, what do you think about day 3? This is another, I love day 3.
Yeah. Uh, I think there's two that jump out to me here. Uh, so I'll pick one, you pick the other, maybe. But I'll go with match 1 here on day 3. We're looking at Paris versus London. Uh, you know, it's two very different philosophies, team building philosophies that both teams have looked at. We have the two EU teams, but only one is actually represented by European players. But so that'll be cool. Not only to see how Paris can stack up against the reigning champs, but also just in general this storyline about EU and player nationality. I think that'll be super cool to see how that unfolds.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. That is a very, very good match. We've been talking about that on the podcast as well. This matchup's going to be hyped up. I got to go with the other one that you were talking about, Shanghai versus Vancouver, which is essentially a Contender Season 3 Korea rematch, Runaway and Kungdu. Of course, you're missing two key players of that Kungdu roster on Shanghai, but you got all a Runaway on Vancouver. Essentially a nice little rematch. That one's going to be an interesting one for sure. I'm super excited. That's going to be the first time Vancouver is in action as well. I'm very hyped up about that. But besides that, on this day, we got NYXL absolutely stomping Washington Washington Justin. They should have a player named Justin on their team. If I do get drafted by the Washington Justice, by the way, guys, I am officially going to make my in-game name Justin. That is the announcement. And then you got Hangzhou Spark versus LA Valiant, which I think should also be a pretty good game. I think that's the first time Valiant's in action. Yes, they lost soon, but besides that, they got a pretty good team. Day 4, the last day of this weekend. There's also some interesting matchups on this day. What are you looking forward to?
Day 4. Again, sort of the joke response is the battle of the cable companies. We do have Philly versus Atlanta on day 4, but I kind of wanted to see Outlaws Shock this week, but that didn't happen.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe one of the closer ones would be this last match of the day, looking at Seoul versus Dallas. Just because Dallas will have played already against San Francisco that first week, but again, we're looking at a really, like you mentioned, really improved roster, and just want to see exactly the direction they might take. That be really interesting.
Yeah, that's definitely. I mean, that's definitely one of the best games they had that week 1 last year as well. One of the most historic rivals in Overwatch in general. The teams are very different now, however. So it does feel kind of weird that they're still trying to force this rivalry to me, especially since both teams kind of sucked last year. And now their rosters are completely different, and there's barely any envious or got Lunatic High.
Yeah.
left in either of these teams at this point. You still got little sprinkles here and there, but not too much left. It's still a cool matchup. I'm looking forward to. If we're talking, I mean, I don't think there's any like storylines here, but if we're talking what I think is going to be the best match of this day, it's going to be Gladiators versus Shock. Based off their talent, I think these two are two of the best in the Pacific. I finally like watching this made me realize how much I think the Pacific has a very, very talented division compared to the Atlantic this year, which is a little bit scary. At least it's only the first place of each division that really gets any advantage in as far as playoffs goes, but stage playoffs as well now. I went through these and decided to sort of take a look at how they decided to schedule things because, of course, in the format post, they told us that teams will either play 2 games, 1 game, or 0 games in a week, a complete bye week. No one has a complete bye week in week 1, which makes sense. I think when I scheduled it out before, only 3 of those weeks there will be bye weeks probably. So I'm guessing that's going to be week 2, 3, and 4 every stage. But I decided to go through. There are 12 teams, right? Is that right? 12 teams that are playing 2 games. That's Hangzhou, Shanghai, Houston, San Francisco, the Philadelphia Fusion, NYXL, London, Boston, the LA Gladiators, Dallas, Atlanta, and Seoul. And then 8 teams, Chengdu, Guangzhou, Washington, Vancouver, Valiant, Paris, Toronto, Florida, that are playing only 1 game. And they kind of scheduled it. I think everyone on day 1 is a team that plays 2 games, which makes sense. You give them day 1, and then most of these teams don't play until day 3 or day 4. They don't play. They basically scheduled it so that no one is playing 2 days in a row. If you play on day 2 and you play 2 games that week, you for sure are playing on Sunday. And that includes the Houston Outlaws, the Dallas Fuel, the San Francisco Shock, and the Atlanta Reign. And then on day 3, you have a bunch of teams that are playing for the first time in the entire week. Los Angeles Valiant, Washington Justice, Paris Eternal, Vancouver Titans. So they sort of scheduled it where if you're playing 2 games in a week, you're most likely going to play on day 1 because every single team playing on day 1 plays 2 games. And then if you did play on day 1, you aren't going to play again until either day 3 or day 4 in the week. If you're only playing 1 game in a week, it looks like you are either going to be playing on day 2 or day 3. I don't know how they're going to do this for the rest of the season, but this is how it is formatted for week 1.
Yeah, hopefully that's intentional. That sounds, helpful.
Yeah, scheduling is hard. Oh my goodness. I tried to schedule for my fantasy football league once, and it was hard. I really got to give props. And my fantasy league only has 10 teams. Imagine doing it for like 20 teams. They're like the NFL with 32 teams. Shouts out to the schedulers out there. They're really the unsung heroes of the Overwatch League. Joe, you wanna talk about these Winter Wonderland skins? I haven't seen half of these skins. I gotta go on the Overwatch Twitter and look at these.
Yeah, they've been doing. So again, Winter Wonderland comes out tomorrow, probably tomorrow evening. To go to the live server. Hopefully that means we'll get a PTR patch coming with that, as well as moving from the PTR to the live server when it's there. So that's obviously this big sort of refocus. Bash doesn't go through shields, all that kind of fun stuff. But yes, as is sort of been typical with some of their recent holiday events patches, they've been previewing skins, previewing the winter holiday skins daily now. So I think we'll probably actually get another one today before the launch tomorrow. But yeah, so far we've seen Snowboarder Zarya, Arctic Fox Lucio, Sugar Plum Fairy Mercy, Biathlon Widowmaker, Gift Wrap Bastion, and Figure Skater Symmetra. and
Yeah,
some of those are legendary, and some of those are epic. Uh, but yeah,
yeah.
so
These
you
are all
looking through those?
Yeah, I just looked through all of them. These are all great. They're all festive. I mentioned it. Love Winter Wonderland so much. Snowboarder and biathlon Widowmaker. You got some like Winter Olympic theme. I feel like right there. Some skiing, some snowboarding. But yeah, I really like Sugar Plum Fairy Mercy. That's probably my favorite skin so far. But I also love Snowboarder Zarya because I play Zarya the most. And Zarya started off with some terrible skins, and she has continually got some amazing skins. I Snowboarder Zarya is one of my favorite. You got the little bear. You got the little bear hat. It's pretty cute. What's your favorite so far?
That's a good question. I might have to go with maybe the Lucio skin or
Yeah, that is
Bastion,
cool.
just because it's a cool idea to have the Bastion skin that they have. But after the first couple days, people were concerned that it might just be all furry skins, but that didn't end up happening. So
Really capitalizing on the furry market is what Blizzard's trying to do. Uh,
obviously, no other explanation.
no other explanation. They have figured out their target market, and it is the furries. Uh, Topics. We got a lot of topics today. We will finish off with our season 2 preview, which started the last episode. We previewed the Houston Outlaws, and who was the other team we previewed?
Shanghai, I think.
Shanghai. Yes. So if you want to check those out, go on to episode 16. That's where we started our season 2 preview. We will touch on 2 more teams here at the end of this episode. But let's start off. We've been given these teams grades. These expansion teams grades on their new branding, their logos, their colors. We've been giving them A through Fs, but I think it's time to compare them with each other and go 1 through 8. Give a ranking of our favorite expansion team branding. Let's just go back and forth, starting with number 8. You started off, Joe. Who is your number 8?
Hmm. Um, I think probably for the sake of colors, I would probably give 8 to Chengdu Hunters. And again, there's nothing, uh, really nothing bad that we saw from their branding announcement, with the skins and stuff. But to go with the orange instead of the yellow or the gold or whatever it is, or to do orange and gold together is just that's now working for me.
Oh yeah, my number 8 is also the Chengdu Hunters. I know tons of people are big fans of them. I'm a huge fan of the panda logo. I think it's awesome. But I mean, if you just look at most of the team branding I'm looking at, because the team branding we are going to see the most is what is the Overwatch League production branding. So I'm mainly looking at what I saw on Watchpoint. Um, and seeing that just bright orange, ugly background with that panda is just hard to look at every time. Because if you got the panda on a white background, it looks awesome. The orange background, it doesn't look so good. And the orange, gold, and black, just not so good. I think their skins look fantastic. I think their logo, branding, and colors not on their skins look terrible. So I'm putting them number 8. Who's your number 7, Joe?
Mm. It's a good question because I think I've got 2 that are like tied for 6th almost. Um, and so yeah, those 2 would probably be Toronto, um, and actually I think Vancouver.
Hmm.
Vancouver Titans. It's we graded those. We graded Vancouver like last week or 2 weeks ago or something. But I think in the time since, I'm becoming a little bit less of a fan. Uh, I think particularly because of the colors, and we realized that that's uh, based on more of the Canucks brand and that unity than it is the Overwatch team. But I think that's a little bit to its disservice. Uh, that I don't know, but it's one of those 2. I think take my 6 and 7, Toronto and Vancouver.
2 at once. I like it, Joe. My seven, and I'll do my six as well. My seven is the Washington Justice. I've talked about my disdain for this logo. It does look better on that red background. Um, that is for sure. But I don't know. Their shield is confusing to me. I don't know what everything represents. I know there's a W in there. I don't know why all the what's going on in it. And I really don't like the thin blue line they went with on a red background. It looks fantastic though. To be honest, Chengdu Hunters is the only one I hate. Like I don't like. Washington just like number 1 through 7. I like all of these. I'm just ranking them based off how much I like them.
Yeah.
So number 6 is Toronto Defiant as well for me. I mean, just nothing too special about this one. If I look at this Watchpoint preview and I see Toronto versus Outlaws right now on this graphic, and I block out the tiny sliver of red to the left of their little square here, I can see Toronto as a black and white team, and I that is so cool to me. um, but black, we'll have to do it black, red, and white. Just overall, their logo, it's just nothing too special for me. I've got nothing too much to complain about it, but they're my number 6. Number 5,
For me, yeah. Number five then is where we bring in Washington. Uh, I think it's definitely fair to say they are a bottom half uh, branding team. Uh, whether or not you think they should have gotten more creative with their colors or something. Like I mentioned the week that we reviewed them, they definitely achieved what everyone expected them to achieve. Uh, and I think that's worth something for sure.
yeah. um, I'm all for the red blue. I don't mind it too much, but now we get to, so I'm on my number 5. Honestly, we get to now. It's very hard for me because I very much like all of these. Um, 7 and 6, I was like, I like them. I don't hate them. Now we get to 1 through 5. All of them I enjoy thoroughly. And I'm gonna have to go with Guangzhou Charge first on number 5. Um, in the episode, I think I said their colors are like, I like their colors, but they could have been more creative with it than just going with one color and then a lighter version of that color, basically. I do like how they also have like the neon. It doesn't show up in the watch point graphics, but they have like a little bit of a neon going on alongside these other two colors, these other two bluish colors. Um, but yeah, I like their GZ. I mean, it's nice and simple. It's not going to win them the top 4, but I like it. I like Guangzhou Charge's stuff, but it doesn't deserve to be in my top 4 of expansion teams here. What do you got? Number
Um,
4. We get to our top 4 half, our top half.
yeah, number four. Number four, I'm putting Hangzhou Spark. Again with the pink and blue. I think some of that is uh, just personal preference. But whatever. But uh, I don't know. It's not just much to say. I think this was more of a personal choice than anything.
Yeah, I'm also going Hangzhou number 4. I know everyone on Watchpoint they mentioned Hangzhou might have the best branding just because of the pink and blue, but in my opinion, colors, I mean, we talked about it. Colors are just one of the 3 many things in your branding, and their colors are fantastic. I agree with everybody on it. Um, their nickname's pretty cool, but their logo's fine. So they're only at number 4 for me. I think there are 3 expansion teams that do a little bit better than Hangzhou did, especially logo wise. Their logo's cool, but I mean, a very specific reference that only some people get. So you definitely need to go a little bit more wide range with your logo right there. Number 3, we get to our top 3, Joe. What do you have?
Number three for me is Guangzhou. Guangzhou Charge. And I think again that's mostly actually to do with the colors of the team and the skins that they've sh showed us so far, with sort of the dark blue and the aqua blue. That I hope, actually I haven't looked, maybe maybe these expansion skins are already on PTR or something. But I hope the rest of the skins for the rest of the cast look as good as the ones we've seen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I just really like the colors for Guangzhou here in number three.
All right. My number three. This is where it gets even harder. I gotta give these expansion teams some credit. They did a great job. Nicknames aside, some adjective nicknames. I mean, they did a great job. And that's speaking of adjective nicknames. That's a kind of a nice little segue into my number three, Paris Eternal, who have a fantastic logo, one of the best color schemes in the league, but their adjective nickname has led them to only number three. They had such potential for a number one spot in this expansion branding list. But yeah, I love their colors a lot. I talked about it. Very European soccer esque, their entire brand. Colors European soccer esque, their logo European soccer esque, their nickname definitely not, but fantastic colors. They're probably going to change this because I know they did change sort of the graphic design throughout the season last year. I'm talking specifically Overwatch League's production crew changed the graphic design. I definitely think they're going to end up changing that red logo on a blue background because it's very hard to look at. Hopefully they don't go with the yellow background. Maybe they change the logo to a different color instead of red or something like that because it is super hard to look at on the graphics. But besides that, I love those three colors. It's just about figuring out how to pair those colors exactly. But Paris is my number three. Number two, Joe.
Yeah, so now we are up to number two, and so that's where I'm going to put Paris also. I think for similar reasons you talked about, this is, I think, out of all of them, this is the one that's probably grown on me the most. Just because the rooster, I think, threw everybody off originally, but yeah, it's making more and more sense, and it's I think they're going to be able to pull this off pretty nicely.
Oh yeah, I think this is when it comes down to it, it's one of the best logos in the league, the most unique colors in the league, and um, Paris is they did a great job. I think they captured their country and city the most out of almost any of these teams. So good job, Paris. My number two. This is very hard. I've flip flopped on this a lot, but my number two, someone that you had very far down, Joe, the Vancouver Titans. I know you're not as big of a fan of the blue and green. I love the blue and green. I love their logo, and I love their branding overall because it's nice, it's simple, and they just went with a nice little Yeti mascot. I like the Vancouver Titans branding a lot. I don't think we got I really wanted more green in the league. We've got Valiant with their green and ugly yellow. We got Houston Outlaws with their neon green. And this is the third team to utilize green. And I think they do utilize it the best. I like the green and blue. Number one, Joe. We're already at number one.
Yeah, I mean, it's only 8 teams.
I think we have the same. If we could deduce, I think
I
we have
think
the
so, I
same
think so.
team.
I've
Yeah.
been I've been keeping track as we go. Yeah, so number one then comes out to be Atlanta Reign. Um, they didn't try to do anything crazy with colors. Just red and black and a little bit of gray, probably some white. They didn't try to do anything crazy with the name necessarily. We talked about uh, it's sort of insubstantial, but what teams aren't at this point. And the Phoenix is just cool. It's sort of like Paris in that it's nice at any size. Whether that's going to be like a full team icon or just like a little patch on a skin. It just makes sense.
Yeah. And I mentioned it like the little crest or little outline for the Phoenix is very resembles the in-game sort of crest around your character in Overwatch. So that reminds me a lot of that. Honestly, they just went above and beyond with this logo. This is one of my favorite logos in the league. I love it so much. The Phoenix is so cool. It's reaching for the crown too. I just everything about this logo. And even when we had Miriam on, if you haven't listened to that interview yet, Miriam, the art major who graded these, she totally agreed to. This is just a fantastic logo, and I definitely can't complain about the colors. I think they did red and I mean they didn't do black. They're officially red and charcoal gray and light gray, but I think they did it a lot better than Toronto did. Um, so I think I love their colors. And Atlanta Rain, not a bad nickname at all. I was flip flopping between Vancouver and Atlanta a lot, and I think I'm sticking with Atlanta now. I don't think too many people are talking about Atlanta's branding or Atlanta in general too. I think it's a pretty underrated branding, honestly. Maybe it's because their team as well. But Atlanta takes. I mean, it's a clear number one. Me and Joe had some differences throughout our top eight, but it's a clear number one. Atlanta Rain takes it. All right. We move on to our next topic. Jeff Goodman. I mean, to continue on this creator series sort of thing that Blizzard has been having at the Overwatch at Blizzard headquarters in the Overwatch section. They've had this nice little streamer room. This time, Reinforce came down, and they had Jeff Goodman talk to him. Two big names. And they talked a lot about a bunch of different topics. He admitted Brig was probably too strong at launch. Very true. Honestly, Brig, probably the strongest character at launch of the hero out of anybody. Because she was immediately picked in Overwatch League. That's how you know. Like all these other heroes take like 3 months. Like Ana took 3 months. Ana was overpowered at launch, but it still took her like 3 months for people to understand how to play her. It took people like a week to understand how to play Brig and realize how overpowered she was. Insane. Diva high, yeah. So I've heard this before. Talking about Diva, the developers do say there's a high pick rate, but they almost always say that there are no changes planned. What do you think about that? Like she is consistently throughout the game, throughout the entirety of this game, been one of the highest pick rates in all competitive formats. Overwatch League, before Overwatch League. Why do you think they're not planning any changes to her?
Yeah, it's sort of weird. I think because I think Diva's a pretty unique case. Because yeah, she has a high pick rate, but it's not like Brig was, because there's like a super a super overpowered utility that she has necessarily. I mean, we could talk about DM, but uh, it takes skill to be able to manage that. Unlike some people might argue shield bash. Um, and she doesn't have a pick rate, or a very high pick rate, because as a character she's overpowered necessarily. We see her uh, in lots of different team compositions, but uh, it never really feels oppressive to play against a good diva, you know,
Yeah,
unless you're like Zarya trying to throw grabs or something. But um,
yeah.
but, but yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I think again, because you don't get very many complaints, uh, and she fits into several different team compositions. Uh, because the way that you fix one character getting picked a lot is either uh, trying to reduce that pick rate or try to increase pick rates of other heroes. And so I think that some of their efforts to do the latter have just resulted in the Diva being used in other ways for other things. Um, I think her case is similar to Mercy's a little bit in just that uh, in order to change what people like about Diva and change the reason that people use Diva would also involve like a um, pretty significant rework of like the way that she plays, which is something they're probably trying to avoid if they can.
Yeah, I agree with you. Diva, I think that the type of player Diva annoys the most are the players that want to play hit scan DPS, specifically Soldier and McCree. Diva just gets up into their face and annoys the living heck out of them. I mean, they pretty much are very underpowered now because Diva exists. Besides that, like Zarya, of course, Diva can eat Zarya grabs, but Zarya still counters Diva because her beam goes right through the defense matrix. So that's an interesting matchup. But I don't know. Diva does definitely still take some. I mean, she's hard to play. It's all about positioning. If you get out of position, you're just dead. You easily get just 600 to 0 out of your mech if you're too far out of position. It's all about positioning. Aiming with her is not that hard. Like shooting people is not that hard. Defense matrix, it's all about knowing when other players have their ultimates. It's all about game sense. So Diva's a hard character to play. I don't think she's too much of a. I don't know. She's not too much of a problem. Maybe a little bit of a nerf, just so she doesn't get picked as much. So that in certain situations, like she's just. It's rare that someone's like Diva's not strong in this situation. She's like, I don't think she's weak in any situation really. She's a good pick in any situation. I think she needs to be weak in some situations. I think that's the one thing. And then in those situations, you'll get McCree players and Soldier players back on. They'll have a situation where they're stronger. So yeah, I don't think Diva huge nerfs necessary for Diva. She just needs a little bit of tuning, maybe just a tiny nerf, just so that some situations she's not the best pick. It's hard not to pick a Diva because she's just always a good pick. So they talked a little bit about this. Mr. Nate Nancer, the commissioner, talked a little bit about this on Watchpoint, but syncing live patches with the Overwatch League, which is something people have talked about for a while. While Nate's explaining this, the Twitch chat was going off, basically putting question marks and saying that he was avoiding the question. I don't think he was avoiding the question at all. I think he completely answered the question. They're going to start trying to sync live patches with Owl, which is fantastic because that was a big issue last year, right, Joe? Like there would be a new patch and then we'd get like 3 weeks of Overwatch League on an old patch and everyone would complain because they're like, I just want to see like who's strong on the new patch. I want to learn how to play the new patch, but I have to sit here and watch people playing characters that used to be good. And all this stuff, especially in situations where, the first Brig patch was what they played on in Stage 4 and she was insanely overpowered in that patch. So she was almost a must pick. And everyone in the normal game was sitting there where she wasn't necessarily a must pick, watching Brig be picked in almost every match. How do you see this working out, Joe? Do you think they're going to be able to? They keep saying they're going to try. Do you think this is going to work out?
I mean, if they really want to do it, they can do it. I mean, I don't think. As far as I know, not being a game developer, that doesn't seem like something that's out of the question if they decide that's something they want to do. But yeah, as far as do I think it should happen? Absolutely, yeah. I think that would be helpful, not only for spectators, but even for the players to an extent. That when they're when they're playing ranked or when they're trying to do stuff on live at home, they don't have to make that distinction all the time.
Yeah. Hopefully it would be great if they could sync those patches up. That would be fantastic. And I'm sure Nate, I think the situation is Nate really wants them to do it, but Jeff Goodman and Jeff Kaplan are kind of just like, yeah, we can try. We don't want to like promise it, like they don't want to like, what if they make a huge mistake and then they like have to, I think the reason they're saying they're going to try is because, and they don't want to promise anything is because what if they make a big mistake in a patch that comes out the week before the Overwatch League starts and then they can't fix it until the games have already started. And I'm not talking like I'm not talking a quick bug fix or anything. I'm talking like stat-wise, like what if they make Doomfist too overpowered or something like that and they need to change it as soon as they can. I mean, they can't just make promises like that. I think that's the situation. But hopefully they could try their best to sync it with the Overwatch League. That would be fantastic because I do like seeing it on the newest patch possible. We talked about this on the show once. They rarely are playing on the live patch. Like, it's barely ever. What else? I mean, they're playing around with more prototypes of alts that are weaker but charge faster. So a lot like Pulse Bomb, Tracer's ultimate. I like those type of ultimates because Siegel really likes those type of ultimates too. He likes low impact ultimates, and I totally agree with that. I also like low impact ultimates. It's cool. Overwatch is a game of ultimate management almost. I think it would be cool to see that not be the case all the time. So I definitely like those types of ultimates. Anything else that stood out to you in this interview before we move on to the season 2 preview teams?
Yeah, they were. I guess he and Reinforce were throwing around a couple hero design comments. The couple that stood out at least were apparently Jeff mentioned that they had at one time they had a hero that did did damage as a percent of the opponent's health rather than a straight number,
Ooh.
which sounded interesting. The Reddit person looking at who made their summary said they will still likely do that at some point. I don't know if that came out of the interview itself or out of this person's analysis, but it's interesting, interesting idea for sure. Maybe as a potential counter to tanks essentially. They're also going to fix the weird bubble graphics when they start flashing red and blue and all that. They're aware of that and they're working on a fix for that here pretty soon. And then yeah, same thing that hopefully sometime this week we'll be getting a PTR patch. I would assume probably tomorrow evening or Wednesday at the latest when Winter Wonderland launches.
Sounds fantastic to me. I love how they're doing these interviews almost like every week or every other week with these content creators. It's fantastic. Keep them coming, Blizzard. I like staying updated with what the developers are doing. Season 2 preview. If you don't know how we're doing this, we're doing 2 teams every week until the season starts, and then on our last week we are basically predicting the entire season. We're predicting the final standings and who we think is going to win it all. Last week we did Houston and Shanghai. We're doing one from Atlantic, one from Pacific every week, and we take that team, we give them an off-season grade based off the moves they made. We give them a couple standout players each that we think they're going to have this season, their most anticipated matchups, and then we compare what their result is going to be to their season 1 result, better, worse, or about equal. This week we get one of the expansion teams, so we don't even get to do that really. But
it's true.
We'll start off with the Atlantic. This isn't an expansion team. This is your defending champion, London Spitfire. So Joe, we start off with their off-season grade, their changes. If you take a look at their changes, they traded closer to Dallas Fuel, so they no longer have closer at support. And then they acquired guard, a flex player from Element Mystic, a Korea Contenders team, of course, and they added support to replace closer in Krillin. He played for Crusher Gaming in Korea, so not too many moves. And why would you make too many moves when you have a championship roster? What do you think about their off season?
Yeah, I think that's exactly the logic they're working with here. It makes total sense. You've got this core of 6, now champion level players, brought up to 8 with some contenders additions, and you know that they're they had essentially their pick, I'm sure, of who they wanted to try to fill out this roster that they're building. But yeah, you're right. Not very many changes, but not very many if that's not what you need, and I think London was definitely left in a really good place after season 1. So the interesting thing will be how they developed now in the off season, compared to lots of the other teams that were um, putting in work to get to be growing uh, more obviously
Yeah,
uh, than just individual practice and that sort of thing.
yeah. It's London's definitely an interesting case because they started off the season very well. Middle of the season, very bumpy. And then end of season, fantastic again. But we're talking end of season. We're talking we're talking like game 2 against the Los Angeles Gladiators in the playoffs. They started looking like they did at the beginning of the season again. So I love this roster. It obviously has the potential to be the best in the league because they were the best in the league in the end of everything. They only lose closer. They add guard and Krillin, and I mean closer was playing a lot less than us anyway. So this isn't even this doesn't affect their starting lineup whatsoever. Their starting lineup's fantastic. Um, I mean I can't give them anything else besides an A in the offseason. They had a championship roster. They added 2 nice talent and only dropped somebody who didn't really affect their team that much in closer. So I'll give him an A. I did cut you off before you gave a grade, didn't I?
Oh no, but yeah, I mean, I would have to agree. There's not tons of more improvement we could have expected from them, really. Uh, I think A definitely makes sense. The good question will be once they start playing, uh, do they show us that they deserve it? But yeah, I'd give them an A first, from what we know now.
Yeah. As far as standout players, I guess I'll start. I think Bedosian. I think he was one of their standout players last year, but I think he was honestly Jonak style Zenyatta play that he just wasn't as good as Jonak, so people didn't recognize him as much. But I think he was super important to the London roster. So I'm going to give Bedosian one of the standout players. That it's hard not to give it to Prophet after his MVP performance in the championship
Yeah,
game.
for me, it's hard to look at this roster and pick out uh, any specific players really. But uh, and I think actually for that reason, I'm gonna highlight players to watch. I am gonna highlight Krillin and Guard, players that we haven't seen uh, playing for London or in the Overwatch League at all so far. Uh, that I really want to watch, especially here in the early season, uh, how they're finding their place again in this all-star roster, this champion roster. Uh, to, to keep developing that, hopefully, because they've got to have aspirations for season 2 as well.
Yeah. As far as anticipated matchups go, Philly Fusion has got to be up there. Who they play immediately, rematch of the grand finals. And I'll go with another. I'll just throw a second one in there. NYXL. I think these are the 2 best Atlantic teams, NYXL and London. They had a huge rivalry last year. I think they have won once again. NYXL, London, two of the best teams in the league, and I think the 2 best teams in the Atlantic. So, nice little rivalry going there. What any other anticipated matchups you got? I think there's
I
an
mean,
obvious one.
yeah, I was gonna say the other obvious one. Looking at London and Paris, we'll see them playing. I think we said like day 3 or something of the first week. To see exactly where those 2 teams will stack up. Beyond that, the Fissure Gesture stuff is basically old news now. But London and Seoul, who were relatively dominant early in stage 1. When we see them playing again, that'll be cool to watch also, or
Yeah,
early in season 1, I should say.
yeah. London, I mean, lots of chips, a big chip on their shoulder. They're the defending champions, and now we have to compare them to season 1. You can't really do better, can you? I guess maybe having a better record. I mean, you can do better because you won the championship, but you had a pretty terrible stage 2, 3, 4 compared to everything else. So you definitely can do better if you're the London Spitfire, um, which is basically win the championship but have a better record than the previous season. Do you think they do better though? What do you got?
I think it's certainly possible. Like I mentioned, some of these changes they made in the off season, most of them probably for us are, invisible, that they're not to do with personnel. And so, it's just a question of adaptation, I think, going into season two, how they're able um, to maintain what they finished season one with. They've got everything to lose here, and not much to gain, but we want to. Their goal is definitely to maintain.
Yeah. I think they do worse just because I don't think they're going to win this year. Um, I think they got a great team. I think they're still playoff bound, obviously, like maybe even win the Atlantic Division, but I think there's just too much other talent, too many teams trying to improve. I don't think we get a repeat champion, especially in a league that's so highly contested. And you had so many teams that possibly could have won that championship last year. I just don't see London repeating. So
And
I
that would
think
be boring anyway.
that would definitely be boring. You gotta hate. Either way, though, I don't think London's gonna just sweep their way through again if they do win. So I think it should still be entertaining. I was just talking about this with a buddy. While the NFL has the New England Patriots, if you haven't heard about the New England Patriots, that is a dominant franchise that is almost always in the Super Bowl. The NFL is still super entertaining because I think every year there are teams that can beat the Patriots. So it does. I don't think it will matter if London repeats because I think Overwatch League is very similar. I don't think that it's obvious that they're going to repeat. And I think whoever plays them in the championship, if they do repeat, will give them a very good match. There's no doubt in my mind. So I think I love Overwatch League and NFL for those reasons. It's a fairly highly contested league. There's no obvious winner in the end. We talk about our first expansion team here now, the Vancouver Titans. They're very hyped up, probably the most hyped up expansion team because they got the runaway roster. Off-season grade, Joe. Of course, for the expansion teams, it's hard. I'm guessing we're not going to grade them on their improvement because before they had nobody on their team, and now they have a lot of people. So everyone should obviously get an A for that.
It's an infinite score.
But I'm guessing the grade should be based off of how skilled these players are. In comparison, mainly not only to the other expansion teams, but to everyone else in the Overwatch League. They picked up almost all of Runaway. What do you think about this roster, Joe?
I mean, there's not much better they could have done. Um, and even if you put aside individual player skill, I mean, to pick up the team as a unit is super helpful, and to pick up particularly this team, huge fan base, huge following, not only in Korea, but all the way around the world. Um, to just lift this team, straight at it to your organization, I think it was a really good move. It's definitely gonna pay off. I think to a certain extent, even. Well, I don't know. I was gonna say even if they do poorly, but that would be interesting. If Vancouver goes like 0-5 in the first 3 weeks,
That's
just to see
scary.
what happened. But who knows?
Um, yeah. Oh, yeah. Grade.
Yeah. So give him an A, I guess.
I have
I
to
mean,
agree. I mean, Runaway was the roster you wanted to pick up if you were an expansion team, and Vancouver was the one that got them. You can't do much better than the Korean champions from the previous season, and that was Runaway. There's just not that much better talent, and they're the only expansion team to pick up a roster in its entirety as well, which is fantastic for them. I think just going in with that. You already got synergy. Of course, you're on a bigger stage now, but you already got that synergy there with these players who have been together for a while. So I can't give them anything but an A. But I will mention that I would not be surprised if Vancouver is not the best expansion team by the end of the year. I do think these other teams have some great talent as well. Vancouver definitely got the biggest names, but Runaway, in season 2 of Contenders, they didn't perform that well, and they've been known to have some pretty poor performances and not really staying consistent. So I wouldn't be surprised if some other teams, expansion teams specifically, had better rosters than Vancouver in the end. But you just can't get better than these players if you're Vancouver. This is what everybody wanted, obviously an A. Standout players for you, Joe.
Again, I think this is really hard to try to see exactly uh, to try to pick anybody individually out of this roster, and I
It's a
I
true
think
team. It really is a true team.
yeah, I think I'm probably not going to try to, honestly, but I mean, we'll look at individual player storylines from this season, talking about Bumper and Roar when we see Vancouver play LA Gladiators. I think that's going to be cool to watch. Really good new main tanks for both teams. Stuff like that is a lot more easy to follow. We'll see eventually who Reg playing his old London team. That'll be kind of cool.
Yeah. Um, I definitely like. God, these are some. Bumper's great. I'm gonna just point out Haxel because he's been on Runaway for a very, very long time. And I think he's a very skilled DPS, and I'm excited to see him in the big leagues. Haxel is one of my most hyped up players here on this Vancouver roster. When you mentioned Gladiators, God, I'm even more hyped up for season 2 because I just realized that most of these teams are only going to play each other once, which is so cool to me.
Or, well, yeah, I was gonna say per stage, but no, like at all.
Yeah, like at all.
Huh.
They're only going to be playing each other once. Last year, everyone played each other like either 4 or 3 times. And I think Monty was talking about this on a podcast once. That's just not hype. Because once you get to like the 4th matchup, you're like, okay, we already know what's going to happen. Like we've seen this before. And I think that was one of the problems. The first matchup between these teams is so interesting because you're like, oh, who's going to be better this year? Like these specific storylines. But like once we get to the 4th time the LA Gladiators faced the London Spitfire, it was like, okay, we get it. Fissure, yeah, we get this was his old team. He's getting revenge. We understand. Like it's cool. But I really like just getting that one matchup. I think since Houston and Dallas are in opposite division, we will only get one Dallas versus Houston matchup the entire season. Like that's pretty cool. If like the other thing about that is if Dallas loses that game, there's no chance for redemption. Like Houston won that rivalry this year. It all comes down to one game, and that's pretty cool to me. That was a random rant I just had. That had nothing to do with the Vancouver Titans. Wow.
It works. It works.
Speaking of matchups, though, who are your most anticipated matchups for the Titans?
Yeah, so I already sort of answered that, but yeah, probably Vancouver, London, or no, sorry, Vancouver Gladiators, definitely. And London to a certain extent with that other storyline, but yeah.
Yeah. Another Kongdu matchup, because obviously we got Kongdu players on Gladiators, but we have 4 Kongdu players on Shanghai.
Shanghai.
Yeah, so Vancouver versus Shanghai, that's happening in the first week. That's a nice little season 3 contenders rematch. I think everyone's looking forward to that one. The other Canada team, Toronto, Vancouver, Toronto, Battle for Canada. That's going to be a fun one too. That's a nice little storyline. Besides that, maybe Hangzhou, trying to defeat the team that stole their blue and pink color scheme.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are Vancouver's got a lot of anticipated matchups for an expansion team, honestly. When it comes to like Guangzhou and Hangzhou, I don't know who I'm going to anticipate as much as Vancouver's got some good ones. So for the compared to season 1 segment, we can't
do it.
we just can't do it necessarily. But we could give a nice little prediction on like what place we think they're gonna make, maybe. Possibly like give me a range. Give me like 13th to 15th. Give me a range of like two separate from each other. I'll start by I'll give you an example. I think Vancouver's gonna get. I think they're gonna make like the wild card playoff thing, where I think it's the seventh or 12th teams make it. I think they're gonna be in that range. I think somewhere from 8 to 10 is what I'm gonna go on Vancouver. 8 to 10.
Yeah, I can see one of two things happening with this team is that either they come into season two and they absolutely hit a wall, and there's just something that they're missing uh, from contenders to T1 to Overwatch League, uh, or yeah, that they come in and they can have decent success. Um, but yeah, I think I would agree that I wouldn't put them. Uh, at least again preseason takes, but I wouldn't put them in uh, very high in that top half. Yeah, that it would be down somewhere. Um, yeah, I probably agree somewhere like 8 to 12 ish. I mean, they're probably uh, considering the players' rosters, they're definitely one of the better of the expansion teams. Um, so yeah, they deserve at least that much.
Yeah, for Vancouver, their ceiling I think is honestly winning the whole thing. I think their floor is. I don't think their floor is too low
Very
either.
low. Yeah.
I think if they're going to be under expectations, it's going to be like 12th at the worst. Like I don't think they're down there with some of the bad teams and bad rosters I see in the league. So yeah, I like Vancouver this season. I don't think they're going to like pass with shining stars, but I think they'll be middle of the pack and have a chance to make playoffs through the wild card. And that's just because we've got a whole plethora of season one talent. But yeah, that's it for our two teams this week. We'll be back with another two teams next week, and we're getting closer and closer to the start with every two teams we preview. But yeah, that's it for this episode number 17. It was a great episode, lots of news, and hopefully we get that full schedule this week, Joe. Social media. If you want to follow us on our personal Twitter accounts, mine is at JWGeorgeIV. Joe's is at Kirkpatrick_Inc. That's INC. The show has a Twitter. It's at On The Flank Show. We also have an email, ontheflankshow@gmail.com. You can either tweet at us or email us any topic you would like us to talk about. You are listening to this in one way, but if you do want to listen to it in a different way, we are also at ontheflank.podbean.com. If you want to listen to us at Podbean, we're on my personal YouTube account, which is pretty much just titled John George. But you can find that easily on my personal Twitter account. We are on iTunes and Apple Podcasts if you own an iPhone or an Apple device. We are on Spotify and Google Play for you Android users. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll check you guys out next week.